just to introduce myself, my name's Clara Rose and I run Clara Rose Consultancy. We've been doing events for a little while. We started doing them in the real world many moons ago, and then COVID hit in and we moved them all online. And since then, we've just been doing occasional events, really, on no particular time frame, but occasional events on things which we think will help lawyers and legal professionals with their careers. It could be something as directly relevant as Helen's talk is going to be today, on how to, get ahead in your legal career. We've done things on the SQE, we've done things on business development as well. So we just try and pick topics of value to people. But yeah, so Clara Rose Consultancy, in the main, what we focus on is helping people with their careers. We help people find new jobs. We're also happy to discuss things like salary increases, career plans, whether you're doing the right thing or whether you're going in the right direction. We're happy to talk to people at any stage in their career. But yes, today it's Helen that's going to be doing all the talking rather than me. Oh, what I would ask is if you could keep your cameras and yourselves on mute for the time being. Helen will give us a talk with lots of information, and then if you've got any questions, just type them in the chat box, and there's a section at the end. There'll be time for questions, and I can ask those questions to Helen. So yeah, if anything comes to mind at any point, just pop it in the chat box and I'll get to it a little later on. But Helen, over to you so you can introduce yourself.
Okay, great, thanks so much. Okay, all right, I'm going to share my screen. May just take a moment. Okay.
That's fine, we can see it.
Is that working for you? Okay, yeah. Great, you can see that. You just give me one moment then. I was just having a few software updates today, so everything's a little bit slow, but we will get there. We're almost there now, I think. Just bear with me. There we go.
Yeah, we can see the front page now.
Okay, perfect. So right, well, today I'm sort of focusing this talk on sort of how to get ahead in your career, and we're going to cover lots of hopefully really interesting stuff that I certainly wish that I had known way back when at the start of my career, and also just even midway during my career. I think it's things that you just pick up along the way that you just can't know earlier on, which can really, really help you. So that's what we're going to cover today. There we go. And so if you don't know much about me, I'm Helen Pamely. I started off at the Magic Circle. I started off at Linklaters. I was there for about 5 years. I did my training contract there, most of it in London, so just a comment at Lehman. I also did 6 months in Brussels in competition, qualified into dispute, so I became a litigator. At about sort of 3 years qualified, I left Linklaters, and it was sort of about this time that I was really starting to get interested in lots of different things. But one of the things that really struck me was just how stressed out people were in the legal industry, how much people were sort of struggling in terms of their mental health, their well-being, and how this really held them back, I think, in terms of performance as well. So this became a real interest of mine, and I retrained as a psychotherapist alongside being a lawyer. Sort of within this period, I moved to the firm I ended up at, Rosling King in the city, which sort of deals with, quite a lot of large-scale litigation now. It's a London firm, and it was there that I became a partner at 6 years qualified. Since all of this happening, I've also trained as re-qualified as well as an executive coach. So now I coach, lawyers, professionals, all sorts of people, sort of helping them out, with their career, but also really understanding how their minds work, how they can perform at their best, what gets in the way of that, and also lead a happy and healthy life. So that's pretty much me. And so today, just to give a quick overview, I suppose, in terms of what we're going to be covering, I've put together, for the purposes of this presentation, 10 tips to get ahead in your career. And I've also made a little ebook on this as well, which I'll drop the link to at the end of my talk. These top 10 tips are actually slightly different. So I think I've obviously been influenced over the last few months, to bring something new. So we'll cover some of that. And this sort of covers a whole bunch of stuff, from sort of mastering your mindset, as I mentioned, looking at, how you can get into the healthiest mindset, a mindset that's really built for success, and where you're not held back by sort of unconscious beliefs and fears that are perhaps dictating, things other than what would get you in, get you forward as best possible. We're going to look at building confidence. It really is something you can build, and you can do this quite quickly, actually, but most of us don't know how. So I'm going to touch on that as well. Relationships are really key in any career, in anything you want to do, actually. So we're going to look a bit about building relationships, becoming a pro networker. And then we're also going to look at how to set and achieve goals. In my experience, a lot of people actually don't even really set goals. When they do set them, they don't actually work out a realistic plan to getting there. So that's super key if you want to go anywhere. It sounds really logical when you say it out loud, but it's amazing how many people don't do this. And then at the end, we've got, Q&A, so you can ask me anything you want to ask, and within reason, I will do my best to answer that and provide any answers that I can. So first of all, looking at having a career plan, okay, and I don't know if this is an old adage or if it's my adage or something or other, but fail to plan, plan to fail. And as I've said, it sounds obvious, but if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there? It takes discipline, I think, to think about, okay, I'm going to actually sit down, make a plan, really think about what I want, and perhaps even more discipline to stick with it. But it's this kind of intentional living and this discipline, I think, which really does propel us quickly. You're not going to make partner at quite junior stage. You're not going to have really what you want in your career unless you're really thinking about it or extremely lucky. But I don't even know how that would work completely on luck, because if you haven't thought about where you're going, it's just not possible. My dad always used to say to me, and I don't know if this is a slight misquote, but I'm going to say it this way because this is what I've always thought, which is, Einstein said that genius was 99% hard work and 1% genius. And, I've seen so many bright and talented people out there, but ultimately the people who do really, really well are the ones who put in the effort. Having said that, as I'll get onto in this talk, I think there are intelligent ways of working and perhaps less intelligent ways. In the legal industry, we've got quite a toxic culture around billable hours and your value being tied up with the amount of effort you make. Now, I think this can actually be your Achilles heel if you're not careful. Because it's thinking about actually how can you best use your time to get the optimum output. And as I say, I will come on to that later on, but it's like actually you working 15 hours a day isn't actually necessarily going to make you the person who's next in line for promotion or really make you stand out. It's like, what things can you be doing to really get yourself there? And I suppose on this, setting clear goals, thinking about maybe your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals. Now, some of you might be sitting there right now and thinking, look, Helen, I don't even know what I want to do next week, let alone in 5 years' time, and that's fair, But what I'm trying to do here is to get you to start dreaming. I'm trying to get you to start just, getting out of a box of what is possible, what isn't possible, out of that place of judgment. And just really thinking about, if I had a magic wand, like what would it look like for you? What could it look like? Because we have to start from a place of dreaming to actually then, make a tangible, concrete goal and then actually make that happen. So it's really just an exercise to start, helping you to open your mind and thinking a bit differently. But there's a slight delay on this. I keep clicking change slide and it just waits. It doesn't want to move. So this is something I heard a few months ago, and it was like one of those light bulb moments for me, which is, I'm not quite sure who I've stolen it off, which is why I haven't actually put their name on there. I should probably find that out. But anyway, it's a goal is a place to come from, not a place to go to. Okay. Now this for me is really meaningful because I think we're always striving for something outside of ourselves. We're always thinking, I want to be like that person. I want that thing. I want to have that. And it's always external from us. It's always like we're sort of chasing after the next thing. But actually, if we turn that on its head and think, okay, so if I want that thing, like how do I, bring that into my current reality? For example, and by the way, you don't have to even want to be a lawyer on this call. You can think, I want to get out of law. That doesn't matter. I'm just using this as an example. But if you think I want to be a partner, okay, let's imagine what it feels like to be a partner. I do all sorts of exercises like this a lot with myself, with clients. It's like imagining what that feels like. What emotions do you have? What are you like in yourself? You know, what are your thought processes? What have you achieved? You know, bringing that into the present moment, really help, you know, feeling what that's like. And interestingly, the psychology behind this is that your brain doesn't understand the difference between what you imagine and what's real when you actually put yourself in that kind of visualization. So it's a really powerful way to get over any limiting beliefs in terms of what you think you can achieve and what's possible for you, and feel what that place is like. And then from that think, okay, so actually I had done this and I had this in place and this kind of team, whatever it is. And then you think, okay, so that's what I need to put into action now. So that's a bit about that. And then looking at, you know, what stops you from achieving your goals. I'd like you just to take a moment and think about that. Just think about that for a minute. What stops you from achieving your goals? Okay. Now, this might be any number of things. Any number of things. I've listed a few things that might be the case on this slide, but that's not to say that this is exhaustive at all. The first is, I think, as something I've already mentioned, which is around a lack of clarity, you know. And on that, the point is, if you don't know what you want, you just won't get it. It's pretty simple, actually. And I would say that many, maybe most people actually don't know what they want. And so I think this is really something worth doing a bit of exploring around, you know. On this point, we get a lot of head and heart interference. Normally the head saying one thing, well, that's logical, that earns me money, and that's prestigious, and I've done really well, and blah, 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 blah. But the heart is actually saying, oh, you know what, though, I really love this other thing, or, you know, I love interacting with people, and actually I feel like this area of law, or whatever it is, would be more suited to me, you know. So starting to actually really work out, you know, looking at both the head and the heart, what's going on for you. The second point is a lack of direction. And I think this comes from not enough self-reflection, you know. I suppose it's similar to the first point in terms of really taking the time to work out, you know, what is the direction that you want to take. You know, be the captain of your ship, don't just be a passenger. So many people I speak to, they are not in the driving seat of their lives. And that's something really to think about. The third thing, which we'll come on to in a moment, is a lack of confidence. And this is a tough one because mostly a lack of confidence comes from our subconscious, okay? And it's responsible for so much. Like, honestly, I completely relate to this. I think, you know, if I look back over my career, I'm like, my gosh, I was held back so much just because I didn't believe in myself, or I didn't think something was possible. And I think, you know, we're in a bit of a danger zone here because we talk ourselves out of things before we even get to the point where you know, we can even put it into action. It's like, oh no, well, that'll never happen, blah, blah, blah. You know, it doesn't happen. So that's one to watch out for. Another one is environment. Now, this is about thinking about who and what you surround yourself with. Okay, so I think there's a saying or something which says, you know, you are the product of, you know, the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's like really thinking about, who are you spending your days with? Who do you have in your life? Are these people who are your cheerleaders? Are these people who are knocking you down? Are these people who have your back? You know, the environment, the energy we're in is so, so important. So really just thinking about that. Also on that point, I speak to a lot of people who feel as though they're working in a really toxic firm culture. Not to say all firms are like this at all. I probably speak to people when they're a little bit, you know, unhappy with their careers sometimes. So that's something to look out for as well, you know. And on that point, I think, you know, you don't have to stay unhappy. You don't have to stay somewhere that you don't want to. And that also can be a really big realization for people, I think, especially since there's a lot of propaganda in the big firms about, you know, you'll never have anything better and your life will be over when you leave. It's not true. It's just not true. So that's that. Next point is mindset. Which kind of, you know, ties in with the confidence point, I think, which is again looking at the unconscious beliefs, your thought patterns, your negative self-talk, your positive self-talk, you know, all of those thoughts that go around in your head telling you who you are, what you can do, what you're capable of, what you can achieve, you know, all of that sort of thing. And then the final point is fears. And these can be real. They can be real things which you're fearful of, but most of the time they're not. Most of the time it's our, you know, unconscious sort of playing tricks on us. You know, when we're sort of in an anxious state, most of what we fear are things actually that will never happen. Or we're thinking, oh my gosh, what's that person thinking of me? Or if I do that, they'll think I'm so stupid, you know? And a lot of that holds us back from actually just, you know, being the most powerful version of ourselves. So looking at mindset, and I suppose I've already touched on this a little bit, but it's powerful, I think, to understand how important your words are. I've realized this more and more over the years. You know, the words that you say to other people, they're really important. You know, I really believe that it's important that we have a high level of consciousness, you know, in terms of how we communicate with people. But the most important words that you will ever hear are the ones that you say to yourself. And these words cement your beliefs, and you know, your beliefs cement who you are, what you do, how you behave. And all of this kind of works in a cycle, you know. So really look at yourself, you know, what words are you saying to yourself on a daily basis? I hear so many people say to themselves, oh, you're an idiot. It could even be over something small, you know, like I don't know, you forget something, or you just go out the front door and you think, oh, I forgot my earphones, whatever. But oh, I'm an idiot. Look at what you're doing there. Look at what, you know, the words you're using to yourself, because these are powerful. I try my best now not to call myself names, definitely not to call other people names, but also not to accept it when other people call me names, which might sound a bit strange, but it's like, even if they're like, oh, ha 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 ha, oh, Helen, you're such an idiot, and I'd be like, well, don't call me an idiot, I made a mistake, you know. And I think with time, when you start changing your mindset, you realize how powerful this sort of thing is, particularly in a work context as well, because if you're putting yourself down a lot, you're not going to be believing in yourself to achieve all of the things that you really want to achieve. And I suppose that sort of leads me on to my final point here, which is that I can pretty much guarantee you that in life, you will be your own biggest roadblock. You know, other people are there, things are in the way. But if you can learn to start really getting out of your own way, that's where you will really start to make leaps and bounds in career, life, everything. So this sort of brings us on to my interpretation of the lawyer personality, and obviously we're in the realm of stereotype here, but I think it's helpful to sort of understand, you know, where we're coming from on this. And I think as lawyers, there are certain personality traits that do run through, and I'm sure there are lots of positive ones as well, by the way, lots of positive ones. I suppose I'm sort of focusing a little bit here on things that cause us problems. But the one I want to start with is imposter syndrome. And this is something which obviously I've sort of touched on already, to do with mindset and negative self-talk. But this is all about, you know, constantly questioning your abilities despite significant evidence to the contrary. And I see this in, gosh, do you know, I think almost everyone I work with, this is something that comes up. And it's something that, you know, during my career, I certainly really struggled with. I still do today. I don't think it's something that necessarily ever leaves you, but I think your ability to manage this and learn to sort of have it in perspective and have power over you is what enables you to really move forward. You know, I remember when I first started at university and I was sitting there in the lecture hall, and it was beginning of first year, and I think they were, you know, trying to scare everyone into working and not drinking their way through first year. And they said, well, statistically, you know, so many of you will fail. And I think I was sitting there trying to calculate. I was like, oh gosh, 8 people, 10 people, whatever it was. I completely convinced myself that, well, that was me. If anyone was going to fail, it was absolutely definitely me. And I spent my whole first year in, you know, fear that I was going to fail. When I didn't fail, I was sort of really quite shocked, actually. And then I remember when I got my Linklaters training contract, I I sort of, ended up in this big room with all the other people in my cohort, and I'd been having a bit of a chat with them over some coffee and whatever cookies they give you and all that stuff, and lovely people. But I was just like, okay, well, these people are superhuman. There were people who were like concert pianists and spoke 5 languages. I speak French and German. I was like, well, whatever I do, there is somebody who's doing it better and a millionfold. And there was even a girl, really nice girl actually, in our intake, who was a double in in the Harry Potter films. So she'd spent a lot of her time on film sets. I was like, oh my gosh, literally, there's like a film star here. It's just, I don't know if I can cope with this. Really nice girl, but I was like, wow. So I really doubted myself, and I thought, well, I am an imposter. How on earth have I ended up here? And during my training contract, just sort of always felt as though I wasn't good enough. And it was only when I became an associate and then I started working with trainees that I thought to myself, gosh, actually, I was quite a good trainee. I wasn't too bad at this job, and I share these stories because I see it so much in clients. It's just, and other people as well as myself. I think it really holds us back, this way of thinking, and it can be completely debilitating. And it really does plague high achievers. And I think as lawyers, we generally are pretty high achievers. And that leads me on to talking about perfectionism, which is kind of a symptom of imposter syndrome, which I'll get onto a little bit later as well. And I think on that point, I was so afraid of making mistakes. I would check everything a million times. The one criticism I would get as a trainee was that I was a bit slow, and it was because I was so busy checking everything and rechecking it. I didn't make many mistakes on attention to detail, but my God, I was there sort of, anxiously checking it 50 times. So it's quite an interesting one. I mean, Brene Brown, don't know if you've heard of her. She's just phenomenal. If you haven't heard of her, look her up. She talks about, shame and vulnerability and all of this sort of thing. And she's got like 1 million New York Times bestsellers and all the rest of it. She says, which it was like another light bulb for me, that perfectionism is the opposite of healthy striving for excellence. Okay, it's the opposite of it. And she describes it also as like a 20-ton shield, which for anyone out there who is a perfectionist, you will know what that means. I think I certainly do, And the thing is, it's dangerous to think, for example, I am what I accomplish. That you're always needing that external validation for feeling okay in yourself. It hampers achievement. And perfectionism, it's correlated with depression, with anxiety, with addiction, and life paralysis, missed opportunities. Like, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, everybody who is a perfectionist is depressed or is anxious. I'm just saying, it's not a healthy thing, and it's something that's really important that we look at. And healthy striving is self-focused. So, for example, that is questions like, how can I improve? Perfectionism is other focused. So that's, for example, what will they think of me? And I think here we're in the realms of kind of the growth mindset. It's like, oh, okay, cool, I made a mistake, let's learn from this, let's move on. Perfectionism is, right, okay, I'm going to get a stick, I'm going to beat you up with it because, you're crap and you're looking for external validation. And so I think on that, links in with the other points we've got on the slide there, talking about being a high achiever, and also your own worst critic. And I think that just all links in together, really. And I think we've touched on this already on the previous slide, but there are 4 P's of imposter syndrome, and these are essentially symptoms of it. And this is, for example, procrastination, people pleasing, perfectionism, and project paralysis. Now, procrastination, I think, is a really interesting one. I get a lot of people who I talk to saying, the thing is, I'm just really, really lazy. That's why I procrastinate. I'm just lazy. I don't buy that. I don't really meet people where the real reason for procrastination is laziness. Maybe in some people that's how it manifests. I think more often than not, it's because there's some sort of underlying fear, or there's something that's holding you back, or there's something to do with maybe a lack of confidence, a lack of self-belief, or that you're not really passionate about it. There's something going on. So I think the thing about procrastination is something to get really curious about. What's actually driving this? The way to push through it is not just to say, I just need to be more disciplined, I just need to do this, because actually you're then not looking at the underlying cause for what's holding you back. If you can find out the underlying cause, then you can actually untangle that quite easily. It's really interesting. People pleasing. Lawyers are generally such people pleasers in my experience. We're always trying to get the best grades, the best marks, whatever it is, do well at work. It is good to have high standards, and it is good to want to do well, but I think if again, we're in this realm of external validation, that can be quite damaging internally. Perfectionism we've covered. This is something definitely to look at. And the other one is project paralysis, which I can think of this so many times as well, which is that situation where you just think, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. I remember maybe doing research when I was junior, and you were given a task, and it's just like your mind just goes blank, it just fogs over. I mean, you're perfectly capable of doing it, but maybe the fear of not being good enough, the fear of not being able to deliver, can actually sort of paralyze you from being able to move forward. I've seen that a lot in other people as well. So in terms of imposter syndrome in particular, there are things that we can do to combat this. It's about externalizing this voice and objectifying it, seeing it as separate from yourself. If anyone follows me on social media, I'm always talking about how you are not your narratives, you are not your thought patterns, you are not the stories that exist in your mind. That is not who you are. These are just such ingrained narratives. These neural pathways have been embedded so deep in your brain that is what you consider to be your truth, and so that just self-perpetuates. When you actually start to take a step back and see these as separate from yourself, you can change them. You can start thinking in all sorts of different ways, and you absolutely can rewire your brain. That is a scientific fact. Okay, so that's quite empowering, I think, when you realize that actually it is within your power to think in a completely different way. Yes, at first it's pretty hard. I sort of liken it to, I've heard it described as like in the 1920s, where you used to call someone up and you'd have to call up the operator and say, I'd like to be put through to this person, please. And they say, oh yes, okay, whatever, I'll put you through. Great. You call up again and say, please put me through to this person. They put you through. You do this 20 times, they don't even ask you anymore who you're being put through to. They just keep putting you through, So to be able to counter that, you actually have to put a lot of effort and energy into redirecting to another thought pattern. There are all sorts of ways to do this, but you can do it. You can, reprogram your mind essentially. So this is pretty powerful. And I work with people a lot on this. And it can mean that things you thought were never even possible to achieve, that you actually can. But with imposter syndrome, you create that, you realize this is an objective thought, and you can even give it a name. I know people have called it like, I'm trying to think. One was like Little Miss Bossy or something, but actually giving it persona, thinking of it as separate from yourself, and then you can actually extricate yourself. Like, oh God, there's Little Miss Bossy again, telling me what to do, or Little Miss Perfect, or whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be a woman, by the way. I don't know why that's just come to me. Also, the thing to do is whenever we deal with difficult or complex emotions, we try and push them away because we don't like them. We feel like we want to be happy. So, but in the process of trying to push away difficult emotions, they get stronger and they sort of cling on even more. So if you've done any kind of mindfulness meditation stuff, they're like, watch your thoughts, don't attach, and come back to the present moment, and just, all of that stuff, which I love, by the way, which is super, super powerful. But that's the thing, that's what you want to do. You want to just befriend it, be like, okay, cool. So I see you right now. You're telling me I'm an idiot. Okay, well, I'm noticing that. I don't agree with that. Anything else to say? But not pushing it out, because if you start trying to push it out, it will cling on harder. The other thing to do is, make a well done file. Really start to take note of your achievements, or just write them on your wall. Or, if you get positive feedback at work, create a folder where you put this stuff in. It's really important for the brain because, we've got a negativity bias where, I forget the exact percentage. I think it's something like 85% of our thoughts are negative. So your brain is deliberately all the time trying to be negative. So you have to work really hard to wire it in a positive way. Okay, so this is actually really important. The other thing is, know what it means to be human. I know there might be parts of you that don't want to be human, and you want to be superhuman, and you want to be able to do it all and achieve it all, but you are human. And actually that bit of kindness towards yourself will really help you. The other thing is connect with other people. Find people who you trust at work, home, your family. Find people who ideally, won't be judgmental of you, who have got your back. Connect with them. Find people who you can kind of create deep connection with, because that will really help you to feel more resilient on a deeper level. In our society, we talk about, we think a lot about, going it alone, or, I'm a lone island, or whatever it is, but that's not the way that we are wired. And we feel stronger when we surround ourselves with the right people. So this is just a quick diagram, sort of thinking again about this in a little bit more detail. And it's basically from Timothy Galway, who's like one of the fathers of, the founding fathers of modern day coaching. But it's really this idea again of sort of, if we look at, the distortion of self-image, it's this sort of negative self-talk. If we say that we're crap, if we're an idiot and all this stuff, actually then that has a knock-on effect in terms of what we do, how we behave in our everyday lives, how we just our work, whatever's going on. And then from that we have a certain perception which arises from that, again, which is distorted, and then a reaction as well, and then that feeds back into the negative self-talk. So it's worth just really starting to understand how your thoughts actually work and how this impacts your everyday life. And then again, we're still on thoughts here. We're going to move on in just a second onto another topic, but this is really about catch that thought, check it, challenge it. Is that actually true? Is it actually categorically 100% true, or could it be opinion? And then you have the choice to change it. And this is where you start to create new neural pathways, new ways of thinking. So on to personal brand. This is really important. Okay, your personal brand is a combination of experiences, skills, values and attitudes, basically, that make you unique and differentiate you from other professionals in your space. And simply put, this is who you are. This is who you are in the world, and it's the cover by which people will judge the book, who is you. The point is it's really about taking that step back again and thinking about, what is it you're bringing into the world? How is it people are perceiving you? And how can you best strategically place yourself in order to achieve whatever you want to achieve? Ask yourself certain questions. For example, what are the unique combination of skills and experiences that make you who you are? Have a think about that. Then perhaps, how do you want to present yourself to the world? Then how do you want others to perceive you? And sort of, if I can give you any tip here, it would be to always be aware of the impression that you're making, especially when you don't think you're being noticed. I can't tell you how many people have made pretty negative impressions at work events when they've got absolutely hammered. It happens because there's drinks on tap, there's cocktails, whatever. People have a lot of fun and everything. That's great. But actually, some people do take it too far, and it's worth thinking, actually, what impression am I making? Does this fit into my strategy of how I want to be perceived, where I want to go, what I want people to think about me? And as Warren Buffett said, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. And I know a story of an associate in a certain firm, and I think she was a very good associate, and she was wanting to become a senior associate, and it just wasn't happening for her, and she was getting really, really frustrated and couldn't work out why. The reason for this was that she was actually a gossip, and she was always seemed to be gossiping with different people, with a lot of the juniors, and that was not seen as something which they wanted in management, and it wasn't seen as what was expected of management, you know. So I think it's really worth just thinking about things like that. Even think about how you're behaving in the office, how you treat other people in the office. Yeah, just anything to do with that, really. Taking a step back and really thinking about, you know, is this how I want to be perceived, but also is this in myself, that the way that I want to carry myself. I think on this point as well, it's really like thinking about, you know, treating your career like a business. You know, if you've got a business, you have to plan ahead, you have to strategize, you have to think about, where do I want to go? How am I going to get there? What do I need to have in place for that? Who do I need on side internally, in terms of client base? How do I get out there? How do I meet the right people? How do I align myself with them? I think it's really helpful to sort of, you know, bring that into your everyday life, in your career as well. And this sort of leads me on to the next point, which is cultivating relationships. And there is no point at which you are too junior to network. I have some clients who are just fantastic networkers, and we really work on, you know, at the most junior levels, like how they can already be bringing in clients in their training contract, how they can be getting to events, you know, believing that they are worthy enough to email very senior partners and ask them if they want to have a coffee, or going up to them at events and saying, oh, hi, I'm the new trainee, I'm doing this. I've, you know, having looked them up beforehand, I notice you're working on these cases, and that really interests me. I'd love to know more about that. I was too afraid to do that as a trainee. I mean, I was scared of my own shadow in my first seat, for sure. Definitely was. But looking back at it, like, that's powerful, you know. Just the worst they'll say to you is, oh, I don't have time, or, you know, they won't be that interested. Well, fine, whatever, move on to the next person, because most people are decent. And also more senior people, they don't want to sit there talking about law. They've been doing law for 30 years probably. They want to chat to you about you, or something cool, or what your interests are. And that's where you build the relationships, and then you will be first on their mind when a new case comes in. I think, oh yeah, there was that trainee, or that associate, or that senior associate, or whoever you are. Think, oh, you know, I'd like to work with them just because I like you as a person. And you know, it's about, I put here, spearfishing. It's about, you know, not being, you only have so many hours in the day, being really, really intentional with your time. How do you want to use your time? How are you going to get the best results for you? If you want to be promoted, who in the organization needs to know you, needs to like you, needs to trust you? You know, start working out who those people are, and how on earth you start to create that relationship with them. And, you know, this might sound almost a bit extreme, but I mean, you know, when you've got a business, you have, anyone in sales will tell you have like a leads doc. You know, you keep track of all your leads and where things are up to. You know, if you've got a career, think about it. Think, who do you actually want to talk to? What relationships you need to cultivate? You know, when are you getting in touch with them? What events? To put it in a Word doc or an Excel or something like that. But really be thinking about, actually, over the next 6 months, I want to be cultivating these relationships. You know, this is a really powerful way of moving through that. The other thing to do is, I think it's also very powerful to have a mentor or a coach, because this is somebody who will be able to hold you accountable, actually, you know, perhaps help you work out what's in your way, what obstacles you need to overcome, help you build your confidence, and perhaps reach horizons that you didn't think were possible. We see ourselves mirrored in relationship with other people. We're just not that objective on our own. And so that's why it's really powerful to, you know, actually work with other people who can really unlock those things for us. For myself, I mean, I trained as a therapist originally, but, you know, I've done therapy, I've had coaching for years, and I think it's just, you know, what comes out of that can be extremely powerful. And it's like, in the long run, you think, oh my gosh, you know, if I hadn't done that, like, where would I be now? You know, so whatever that is, and maybe internally there's a mentoring system, or maybe you can approach someone more senior or something like that. But it's also feeling as though, I think, you've got someone to go to who maybe knows a little bit more than you, at least on the mentoring side, to give you that bit of confidence. So the next point is about, looking for opportunities to shine. And in my experience, most people don't create their own opportunities. They sort of look around for what already exists and they think, okay, well, maybe I could do that, maybe I could do that. But they don't take a step back and think, actually, well, how do I really want to shine? How do I really want to stand out? What's going to really benefit me right now? And I think a lot of associates get stuck in this trap, as I mentioned at the beginning, of kind of overwork around, well, I'm told that if I'm hitting 130% utilization, then actually I'm a well-regarded associate, I'm doing really well, and I get a good comment in my appraisal. And I can tell you one thing, that will not help you reach partnership. I mean, it might help you in the sense that, yeah, you're seen as a hard worker and there's maybe a minimum threshold for that, but it will help you climb through the ranks as an associate. But then when you get to partnership, suddenly it's all a bit of a game changer, because people want to know essentially that you can run a business, that you're strategic, that you're a good networker, that you have to have visibility. So it's all about intelligently using your time, I think. And if you think I need to be seen by people, well, how can you be seen by them? Is there a particular topic or a case that's come up, or whatever it is, where you could do like a group-wide presentation on it? Could you do a talk? Could you get involved in certain subgroups? I don't know. Whatever that is, just really thinking about what is going to give you the maximum exposure to get yourself ahead. And this leads on to the next point, which is, not waiting to be invited for promotion. Things about, cultivating those relationships with people in power. Don't be quiet about your career aspirations, like, appraisal time or whenever, if you can speak to the right people, find out about how the firm sees you, where they see you going. I've seen so many people plateau at senior associate level, where they suddenly realise, slowly and painfully, it dawns on them they're not going to be made a partner. So it's like, how can you actually work out, if it's the right firm for you, if you're, doing all the things you need to be doing, be bold, believe in yourself, know your worth, and then create the opportunity you want, create that promotion that you want. The next thing is to be organised, and I think this is absolutely crucial. I was I was probably a bit mad on some of my matters, but I had certain ways of doing things and filing, because I knew that whatever matter I was on, if we always did it the same way, even to do with labelling documents, filing documents, all of this sort of stuff, it's like you'd know where to find stuff. And a year down the line, when someone says, oh yeah, wasn't there once a document that looked like that, you would actually know how to find it. This saves you so much time. It also saves you a lot of stress, because you sort of can have confidence in your own systems that you can get there. The other thing is you're minimizing your risk. Mistakes are made a lot of the time because things are disorganized, things get lost, documents get lost, or they can't be found, or you forget key pieces of information. So I think if you can sort out your filing, your admin, like the organization in your team, I don't think this should be a sole task. I think this needs to be something which is, a team effort. This reduces your stress, also minimizes your risk, and just makes your life a hell of a lot easier. And it puts you in a position as well where you're not constantly firefighting, which is just not a nice place to be. And I know as lawyers, that is where we often end up. And on this point of constant firefighting, so this is something which is sort of taken from, management tools, which is the different boxes of all of the stuff that you have in your life. You've got the urgent and the important box, the not urgent and important box, the urgent and not important box, and the not important and not urgent box. Okay, so if we look at the urgent and important box, this is the firefighting box. This is, imminent deadlines, crisis, emergency, things that suddenly come in quickly that you have to deal with. You do have to have some of that in your life, because life just is like that, but you don't always want to be in that box, because that's just super stressful, and it's also quite disorganized if you're always in that box. You really want to be in the important but not urgent box. This is all about problem solving, planning, dealing with things, but in a way that you actually have time to deal with them. Just going through this quickly, but you don't really want to be in the urgent and not important. I think that happens a lot at work. Somebody just comes up to you and says, oh, can you deal with this? Actually, if you take a step back, it's like, well, that's not urgent and it's not important, so no. But then it can maybe go into the not important and not urgent box, in which case you deal with it as and when you've got time to do it. I've had clients who have literally claimed that this little diagram has changed their life because it suddenly meant that they were able to create personal boundaries, which gave them control over their time, which helped them look after their well-being, and it also therefore affected all of their performance and everything like that. So this is really valuable. Brings us on to the next point, which is prioritize your well-being. There is only one of you. Nothing is more important than you and your health, your physical health, your mental health. If you're feeling physically and mentally well, you will perform at your best. Simple as that. You can try and drive yourself into the ground for a few years and do crazy hours and all the rest of it. There will come a limit, and everything has its price. So, I think it's really worth thinking about how you can prioritize yourself. And just always remembering that, you are a human first and a lawyer second. And then this final point is just be you. You can only be you. And this is where your strength lies. I think learning to trust in yourself is a bit like a muscle. The more you do it, the more confident you will feel in being able to do this. And I had a client recently, actually, who told me this wonderful story about how she was told at the beginning of her first seat, I think as a trainee or something, what you need to do is be like Beyonce. If you strut around like Beyonce, you will have the confidence, and I I had all sorts of images of like Beyonce on stage at that point. I was like, that would be quite cool if you could dance like Beyonce, wouldn't it? And there is a lot to be said for, having an alter ego, I think, or using alter ego to be able to channel parts of yourself which maybe you can't normally channel. So this can be a really positive thing. There's a great book actually by, I think it's Todd Herman, which is The Alter Ego Effect, which it talks about the power of using alter egos. But if we can't relate to something, or if that particular, in this case, this alter ego doesn't, it doesn't ring true for you, actually that just makes you feel worse, because you think, well, I'm not freaking Beyonce, am I? I can't strut around and do whatever. So, how on earth am I going to gain this confidence? My response to that, to this person, was just, well, okay, how would it be if instead of trying to be Beyonce, you just tried to become the most powerful version of you? Whatever that looks like, and having confidence that you are enough, and what you bring into the world is valuable, and that you are perfectly capable of achieving whatever you want to achieve. So in terms of the key takeaways from this session, I think we're really talking about investing in yourself. It's really taking that time to sort of deepen your self-awareness, know who you are, notice your thought patterns, notice what drives you, what motivates you, what your dreams are, what your goals are, having the confidence in all of that. I've put EQ on this slide, so we're talking about emotional intelligence. It's like really building that emotional intelligence, towards yourself, towards other people, all of that kind of thing. Investing in building relationships. Relationships are really, really key. Living and working with intention. I think intention is just such an important word. It gets us so far. Most of us don't live life intentionally, and that is a choice. Talking about setting goals, and then creating an action plan to achieve them, and knowing that plan is what's really, really important. Setting a plan which you are going to follow. Otherwise, your goals are just dreams and they won't happen for you. And the last thing, but by all means not the least important at all, perhaps the most important, is prioritizing you and your well-being. There's only one of you. You've probably got a really long career. Most of us are lucky enough to have quite long projected lifespans now. So if you're in your 20s or your 30s, you've got a long life ahead of you. I hear a lot of people feel as though, time's running out for them, and maybe they're in their late 20s. I can assure you it's not. You can do so much with your time, but look after you, because you are the most important thing. And then, yeah, just to say, let's stay in touch. I'm on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram's linked to my Facebook as well. So, please do stay in touch that way. And in a moment, I will just drop into the box, into the chat box, a couple of links. One is to a 10 tops tip. Can't speak now. 10 top tips document, which I've already put together, and you're welcome to download that. It's my mini ebook. Also, I'll put a link to my newsletter, so if you want to stay updated with me that way. Thank you.
Fantastic. No, that's all so useful and so thought-provoking. I don't know if anybody has got any questions. Please do just pop them in the chat box. It was so interesting listening to you speak, because you speak to people sort of on the coaching side. I speak to people sort of on the career side, and there is an element of coaching to what we do as well, really. And it's interesting to hear you sort of say about the things you come across, and how closely they mirror what we come across, and how closely they mirror what we sort of say as well, and how we speak to people. The bit that really jumped out at me is the sort of treating your career as a business, which I come back to time and time again with people, being master of your own, a captain of your own ship. And I think it's so easy in law to be led by other people, and it's normally the firm that's doing it. Maybe it's a particular partner, or maybe it's the firm overall. But in a way, it starts with the training contract. To be granted a training contract by a firm is the first step often. Well, it won't be for much longer, but it used to be. And from that point forward, people feel beholden. And when the firm asks you to do this, you're obliging because you want to oblige. And so you go down paths. I was speaking to someone the other day who's sort of qualified into an area of law that they didn't want to be in at all, because they were obliging, particularly over pandemic and lockdown and this sort of thing. Lots of things changed in businesses and people went along with it. And then they sort of come out the other end and find themselves a million miles from where they ever wanted to be. And now they've got to sort of U-turn and sidestep and, get back to where they want to be. But at least they're aware enough to be seeing that now, rather than, another however many years down the line when they'd be even further from their end game, which they're veered off.
I think that's right. And I mean, I remember being about 1 year qualified myself. And at that point, I was really interested in family law. I think if I'd have stayed as a lawyer, I probably would have gone down that route. But even at 1 year PQA, I thought, oh no, I'm throwing away everything I've got, and it would be a pay cut and blah, blah, blah. I think there's so much, perhaps it goes back to the psychology of, I don't know, even investing and all this sort of thing. We don't like to feel as though we're losing anything, but I think it's always having that growth mindset in mind. It's like, well, every experience you've had is valuable. It doesn't matter if you're going to go through a transition. Yeah, maybe for a while you might earn less money, but money isn't necessarily the only way of measuring success, or even the way of measuring success for some people.
Absolutely, and recognizing that paths are different.
Yeah.
Yes, you can aspire to be partner, and some people do, but loads of people aspire to all sorts of other things instead. Even if it's like looking after their horses or something, because that's actually their passion. So actually that comes first. So actually the job needs to fit around, being there for them, being able to exercise them and all the rest of it, because that's their true passion. So it is a balance. And I think, you can get steered so easily into, this is the path that you must travel down, and people do because they want to do the right thing. Like you say, maybe they don't want to miss out on anything, so they feel that's the path they should go down. But no, say loads of stuff was making me think, but that was one of them. And again, a lot of what you said, people often speak to me about sort of changing direction in terms of area of law. Like I say, with this person that finds himself in the wrong place. And again, that is about having that clarity and the direction that you said about, just knowing what you actually want, is so important. Otherwise, how will you ever get there, and how will you even recognize when you are there?
Yeah, Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And I mean, I notice it even in myself now, you know, if I think of, you know, certain things in life, and I've got a coach, and, you know, she just comes back to me constantly. She just says, but Helen, what do you want? And then as soon as she says that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm sort of caught up in all these different things. I'm like, I don't know. And I think, you know, it's hard. It's actually really hard to know what you want. But, you know, I think first of all, realizing that maybe you don't know what you want is the first step to the point where you can actually work it out. You know,
your phrase about starting to dream, you know, that's where it begins, isn't
yeah,
it? Like, start to think of anything, even if it's big picture, even if it's ridiculous, you know, but
yeah.
start there and work your way back.
Yeah.
Someone's just questioned, are you finding that firms are becoming more aware of mental health awareness? You know, is that something which when you're speaking to people, that their firms are a bit more switched on to that?
I mean, I think we've got such a huge disparity in the legal industry, haven't we? Different types of firms, different levels of awareness. Some firms are sort of pretty hot on this stuff. I think the problem is, I think in a lot of firms, it's still lip service, you know, and that actually what they're saying and what they're doing are different things, and that's a sure way to erode trust with people, you know. In my experience, you know, I think people are still under a huge amount of pressure, you know, and I think that's where, as a lawyer, it's really, really worth thinking about what's important to you, what you want. If you're not in a firm which is feeling supportive, actually really looking out there and starting to do the research, starting to talk to people in different firms and see if it's different for different people in different places. I know that, you know, the Rosling King, when I arrived there, you know, my final firm, that was the best work-life balance I've ever had in my whole career. You know, before that point, I was just, I didn't really know if it was possible to have even something that was a semblance of work-life balance as a lawyer.
And
And I
you
think,
get into that, like you were saying, you can be trapped in a firm and they will tell you, oh, well, we're
yeah,
pretty good at this. It's not really any better anywhere else.
oh,
And that kind of
100%,
thing,
yeah,
you know, and so you do build up, you sort of do get the blinkers on. And you sometimes need to just question things perhaps and think
yeah,
about other ways of doing things. And that's what we tell people, that all the time, you know, firms are so different. There's all sorts of different sizes and shapes and styles and cultures in law firms, in the same way that there's all different sorts of people out there, you know.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the bigger firms as well, especially if you did the LPC with them, you train with them, you might have been there a few years. It's like you don't know anything else. You don't know any better. So whatever they tell you, like, oh yeah, it probably is horrible out there, you know.
Yeah, better the devil you know, isn't it, that kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah
Yeah.
No, fine, fantastic. We'll say it's been really useful. I think it's been really informative. I hope everyone else has found it the same. So absolutely, thank you for coming online and sharing your knowledge. But yeah, it's now about 2 o'clock, so if there's no other questions, I think we can wrap it up. But thanks so much for coming online and talking.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks everyone else for attending as well. And we'll keep in touch. We will send out a copy of this video to everyone that attended and everyone that didn't attend. And we are in the process of getting things on YouTube as well, so you may find it up there as well. But yeah, keep in touch and thanks for coming along.